Hi, we're back with George Benson, and we're talking about the early years. George, when you were first starting out, what kind of things were you practicing? What did you spend your time working on?
Well, like I said, I had good ears, and the things were on the radio were like and I had good ears. I could hear all of the craziness. That kind of thing.
Sure.
Then they had I thought I had done something spectacular when I stole that off of the radio, you know.
Sure.
But I was the only guy in town who could play it.
Uh-huh.
First of all, nobody else wanted to play that stuff. But I can tell you, by learning the popular songs, instrumentals on the radio, and that first song, Honky Tonk, was so big, everybody was into that, you know. And here's this 15-year-old kid playing the devil out. And I was rocking it, you know. And people just loved it. So they said, "Oh, little Georgie playing guitar. Have you heard little Georgie play?" You know,
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
So you were working on tunes. You learned to play by working on tunes. Was that a fair statement?
Yeah, because I understand, you know, if you play something that people relate to or that's simple enough, then they don't get confused and they don't get bogged down with the, you know, the many notes, or the solo doesn't become the most important part. It's a lift, don't get me wrong, and it's an expression. But the thing they'll go away with, two things. They have to have good sound and good feeling. If a song feels good and sounds good, you have got the basis of communications with that audience.
That makes sense.
Basis.
That makes sense. You know, these days, so many people, guitarists especially, they spend all their time on technique and theory, and they've been playing for years, and they know 2 songs. You know, so basically, you think songs are the vehicle to learn everything else.
It's vehicle. And what I learned from people like Charlie Parker, even though he was a very intricate player, and he played a lot of notes, but he had that good sound going.
Oh yeah.
And great rhythm, because he was from the Midwest. I think he was from Kansas City. And he had the blues built into his solos automatically because of where he was from. And what he had that was so wonderful is all of that new harmony introduced to the music world was because they were based on certain harmonics or chords that worked with the melody, and he stayed within the boundaries of those chords. And no matter how intricate he got, you could sing the melody along with his, you know, his songs, or with his solos, his improvisation. And I thought that was spectacular, and I think that's what made him such a standout player.
Well, he changed everything.
He certainly did that.
So besides Charlie Parker, who did you listen to a lot?
Well, I mentioned Charlie Christian.
Yeah.
I tried to steal some of his solos, but he was a little too advanced for me.
Okay.
And even today, his solos are very difficult, you know. But he played some of the best guitar pieces, the best improvisations ever. Yeah. He and people like Django Reinhardt and Wes Montgomery, and in modern times, Kenny Burrell and Barney Kessel, Jim Hall.
Oh yeah.
Very underrated in terms of he doesn't have the world doesn't know him as well as they should, is the words I should use. But when I went on the road with him and Barney Kessel one year, I think I learned more in that week.
Is that right?
Than I did in the early half of my life.
So it was Barney Kessel, Jim Hall, and you.
And myself.
Were you playing together?
We were playing together.
Oh.
They beat me
right,
up thoroughly every night. They beat me up, but it was a good beating up because I really learned. It was like Ma and Pa. They on you, but you get the message.
But they love you still.
Yeah, they did. And when I went to Europe with them and Sarah Vaughan, Miles Davis, and everybody, I mean, I felt big. You know, Thelonious Monk was the star of the show, and I really felt that I was doing something, you know, finally in my life. I'm 24 years old, and I'm hanging out with the masters of our time.
Definitely.
You know, Barney Kessel was a trickster. You know, he could turn the guitar inside out.
Yeah, yeah.
And Jim Hall was just the opposite, but just as powerful, but very subtle in his power. You had to listen to him. I stole a couple of things from him, too. I can tell you what they are.
I won't tell them, it's okay.
But we're going to end up playing some of them before we get out of here.
Cool, cool. Now what about non-guitarists? Who did you like to listen to? I know you like organists a lot.
Yeah, Jimmy Smith dominated the scene of organ, but there was a lot of great ones out there. Johnny Hammond Smith. But I also loved singers. I loved Nat Cole. And during my time, I was just coming toward the end of Billy Eckstine's career, but I appreciated how powerful he was as a singer. And then they had a cat named Johnny Ace, who was big, you know, in my part of the world, because we were only hearing African-American artists and blues mostly. Occasionally you hear a record by Tony Bennett. He was new then. As a matter of fact, I started making records about a year or two after he did.
Is that right?
But I remember his early recordings. They were great. He was an outstanding. And then I fell in love with Mary Alonzo's voice, because it's such a powerhouse. I never heard anything like that in my life, you know.
Sure.
And then the guy who's probably sold more records than all of us put together was Frankie Lane. Remember him?
Oh, I worked with Frankie Lane a few times. Yeah. People know him from Rawhide, you know, but he sang so much more than that too.
Yeah, he was truly great. So I began to vary my listening. Even when Elvis came out, he was singing all of the rock and roll tunes. I don't think people really appreciated how great a how great a ballad singer he was. When he started singing those slow things, you know, you could hear down the depth of his presentation, because he was a good storyteller. But he told the stories with a lot of passion, and women really got the message. But I'm gonna tell you, the guys learned something too, because I did too.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, there's the reason he rose to the top like he did.
And there was Jackie Wilson later, Sam Cooke that came along.
Yeah.
You know, and a little guy from Detroit named Little Willie John. He was one of my favorite singers. So, you know, I listened to a variety of people.
Right. I think singers are an important influence on all guitar players.
Yeah, I think so too.
Do you think it's important for people to know some of the lyrics of the songs they play, even if they're playing instrumentally?
I think that's probably one of the biggest assets I have, is that I was a singer first. And when I started playing instrumentals, I always knew what the melody was. So I was never lost about where I should be in the song. Now, whether I played it good or not was another story. But I was always fishing for something to go along with that fabulous melody. Because Duke Ellington said it very well. He said, well, you can't improve on the melody, man. You know, once a song becomes a standard, that's it. You don't mess with a standard, man. And the melody is the standard.
That's right.
So anything else that comes along, if it's a plus, is because you were outstanding in your presentation. But the song itself was already sold long before you began to play it.
That's an important point and a beautiful point too. That's really nice. We'll be back with a lot more information from George Benson when we come back.